Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of The Franchise Entrepreneur. I hope you're all well and you're all settling back into getting back to work, or at least back to the physical work. I'm sure you've all been probably busy beavering away over this lockdown anyway. So, okay, today's episode, I want to really discuss, again, some topical information that I've seen on various social medias over the last week, in particular, since people have been going back to work. You know, what work is going to look like, what's changed. You know, is it a brave new world, or is it really just pretty much how we left it? Now, I've got kind of, obviously, my opinion on that, and I think it's somewhere in between the two, depending on what sector you're in. You know, there's a lot of people saying on social media, oh, you know, nothing's going to be the same. It's all different. People aren't going to be going to restaurants. They're not going to be going to cinemas. They're not going to be interacting like they used to. Everything's on Zoom. You know, my industry is going to be completely changed. I think there's a little bit of hysteria around this. You know, we've all had a shock to the system. This has been a pretty unprecedented situation. You know, none of us have experienced it before. Hopefully none of us will experience it again. And so it's understandable that there is, you know, some hysteria about it in terms of, you know, people getting carried away in exactly how much of an impact it will have. Because, you know, look, you know, we've been locked down for 2 months, over 2 months. And it's not just been the UK, it's been pretty much the whole world. Now that's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? So, you know, I can understand people thinking that there are going to be extraordinary results from this. But personally, I think 90% of us will see very little difference to the world that we go back to, or at least, you know, once things settle down. I think, you know, certainly if you're going back to work this week and last week, restaurants still aren't open, retail shops aren't open, cinemas you still can't get to. So, of course, it's different. So I'm not talking about the immediate term. I'm talking about, you know, once we're all out of lockdown and we're all back to work, retail will be open. Cinemas will eventually open. Your favourite restaurant will open. Now, will the restrictions make things so different? Well, they're already talking about relaxing some of those restrictions. Now, some of it's, you know, in restaurants from 2 meters to maybe 1 meter. You know, bringing in, you know, certain guidelines that will start to be relaxed. You know, 50% occupancy in bars and restaurants. Bars are only allowed to serve if you're seated. You know, there's a lot of things that will be a bit different initially, but will that carry on for the long term? Probably not. You know, I haven't got a crystal ball like anyone else, but the reality should be that, you know, human beings are a resourceful bunch throughout history. You know, we will come up with a vaccine of some sort, or it will die out of its own fruition, or it's something that we will just adapt to and it'll be part of our everyday life and we'll build up some sort of immunity to it. But the reality is that will it go back to normal on most things? I personally believe it will. It's not, I'm putting my head in the sand. I know there are going to be some changes in the short term, and I know that some changes will be for the long term, but those are few and far between. Do I believe that restaurants will eventually go back to full occupancy? Yes, I do. Do I think cinemas will be open and you'll be able to watch your films, etc.? Yes, I do. Do I think people will still travel to work on public transport? Yes, I do. Do I think the majority of people will still be working in offices, etc.? Yes, I do. Do I think Zoom and those similar portals for videos, etc., will make some difference and more people will work from home? Yes, I do. But all of these things were there anyway. You know, Zoom was there. People were being encouraged to have more flexible working hours. What's happened with the pandemic is it's now forced that issue on people. It's now, they've had 2-3 months of getting used to actually working from home. And the reality is that a lot of people don't like it, or a lot of people just want the choice. You know, there's a big difference between having the choice to do something and having something pushed on you and dictated to you. So I think people having the freedom to choose on whether they work from home or whether they work from their office people will have mixed views. Some people will split their week. A lot of businesses will be looking at it and going, well, okay, look, we don't need this big office, or we need a smaller office, or you know what, it's actually more productive for our employees to work from home a couple of days a week. I mean, certainly one of the things that I've learned from this is by working from home, I'm not traveling. I'm not being interrupted by people coming into my office every 5 minutes. So you do, by default, end up being a lot more productive, I think, if you manage it properly. But would I want to work from home every day of the week? No, I wouldn't. There's been parts of it that have been really enjoyable, and then parts of it, especially now that it's been going on for so long, it's like now I'm kind of itching to get out and about and actually go out and see my businesses, go out and see people, go out and make appointments and things like that. But at the same time, I know that the technology that is there now, and I know how to use it, and I know not only do I know how to use it, but I also know that the reciprocants will actually accept having a meeting now on Zoom, and they won't be offended by it. So instead of me going down to London for an over 2-hour journey for maybe an hour's meeting, and then another over 2-hour journey on the way back, well, I don't need to do that now. So the productivity is greatly changed. But these are not groundbreaking changes here. These are tweaks and subtle changes. And that's what I think people are going to see. You're going to see subtle changes. Everyone's going, oh, God, it's going to be such a big change. The biggest change for everyone is the fact that we are going to be in one hell of a recession. That's the biggest change. And yes, that's come about through the pandemic, but, there's been experts that have been calling a recession out for probably the last 2 years. The last recession we had was over 12 years ago. And normally these things work in cycles. So we've been overdue a recession. But the reality is that we're going to go into a much deeper one than we would typically have gone into because of the circumstances of the pandemic. That's the big difference. And that's the thing that's going to have a much bigger impact on everyone's lives than us having to go into restaurants in smaller numbers, or go into the cinema in half capacity, or having to go to a pub and having to sit down rather than stand at the bar. Those are short-term inconveniences. That's what we're talking about, an inconvenience there. And certainly, obviously, it has a massive financial impact on restaurants and bars, etc. I'm in that sector, so I know all about that impact. But are things going to be that much different? Of course, restaurants and businesses have had to pivot, had to change how they're doing things in order to survive the lockdown. Particularly restaurants and hospitality. Those that have been able to have gone into, deliveries, meal prep, all sorts of things in order to pivot and change. Okay, those are significant changes for those businesses, but some of them will drop those when they go back to opening up their restaurants full time, and some of them won't. Some of them will carry on doing it. But again, in the scheme of things, those are pretty small changes for society as a whole. And a lot of businesses were certainly moving towards a delivery model anyway. So again, what's happened is just speeded it up. It's not Armageddon out there in terms of, the world is coming to an end. There's some businesses that are going to have some serious impacts, with unemployment's going to be significantly high. It is significantly higher now, but we're all being kind of cushioned against that impact at the moment. But certainly when furloughing comes to an end, was starting to be reduced, firms are going to have to make some tough decisions on jobs, redundancies. Certainly my business will, be looking at the exact impact on social distancing on our restaurants, seeing whether it's how many of them are still financially viable, etc. So those are the big changes. It's people's jobs, and then the knock-on effect from that, the same as it is in any other recession. When people lose their jobs, it has an impact on the economy. People lose confidence. People don't want to spend the money. They hoard cash. That inevitably has an impact on house prices. It also then impacts on, retail, how much people are prepared to spend on retail. High streets become emptier. Shops close. Businesses close. Orders dry up. This is a recession. That's the big impact. That's the big worry. What will happen to the stock market? look at the stock market at the moment, it's kind of almost counterintuitive, isn't it? When you look at what's happening on the stock market, it had its dip of, 25, 30%. Everyone thought the arse was going to fall out of the stock exchange, but it bounced back. Now, will it drop again? I would say, I don't know a lot about the stock market, in fact, very little, but having spoken to a few people that do, they seem to think it's going to be the W impact, which basically means it's the shape of the W. It drops, it bounces back. So it dropped by 30%. It's bounced back, pretty much gaining most of that back, if not all of it. But then it drops again and then comes back again. So we're looking for a double dip. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because, at the moment, people aren't back to work yet. The full impact of the recession is certainly not there, and it won't be there for probably a good few months yet. So hold on to your hats. There will probably be another dip in the stock market. I can't see how there can't be when the economies are all tanking. It'd be very unusual for the stock market to continue to carry on growing. Take Apple, for example. If people haven't got jobs and they're holding on to cash, are they really going to go out and buy a £500 phone, etc.? Even the big companies are going to have an impacted at some point. Maybe Amazon are probably one of the few that will get away with it. So there's your impact. Your impact is the economy. The short-term impact is the coronavirus. The coronavirus in itself is not going to change human beings' nature. Our nature is being sociable. So that will come back. We're not all going to go, oh, you know what, I'm not going out. We might be a little bit hesitant to start with, but eventually it's going to come back to close to what we called normality before. But what is normality? I'd done a post on this, a few days ago. And what I was trying to say to people was, people kept on saying, it's going to go back to normal, it's going to go back to normal. And I'm trying to say to them, well, look, we're in a constant flux anyway. Life is constantly changing. So what is normal? Things move on. We'll be using Zoom more. We'll be maybe changing our habits slightly in terms of the restaurants that we went to. We might be going to different restaurants, maybe less often, maybe more deliveries. Subtle changes, because that's how humans evolve. We change as we go along. People going, it's going to be exactly the same as when we went into lockdown. No, it's not. This is what I'm saying. It's a bit of both. How can it be exactly the same? It's never exactly the same. Life moves on. Things change. All these things that we're saying were going to be a massive impact. Well, there probably won't be a massive impact. People working from home, etc., etc. All of these things were there before. It just means that because we've now experienced a few months of working from home, we're more likely to be more flexible and want to work from home more often. It's how society was going it anyway. The coronavirus has just compounded that and accelerated it, in my opinion. So I don't think it's a big, brave new world when we go back to work. There's subtle changes. There's some inconvenient changes in the short term that will have a financial impact. And then there's the recession. And the recession is the one that we all need to worry about. And the big thing that we need to concentrate on is our own personal economy. And when I say our own personal economy, everything that we can control ourselves, our outgoings, what we spend on food, how much we spend on clothing, when we go out, what we spend our money on, how often we go for meals out, how often we get deliveries, how often we spend money on Amazon, how much we pay on our utilities. Do we really need 2 cars? Our own personal economy is what all of us should be concentrating on over this period of time. Where we invest our money, how we invest our money, when do we invest our money? Are there opportunities out there? You can't influence what the governments are going to do. I can't influence it. Worrying about the world economy is futile. Concentrating on your own economics and your own economy is absolutely essential. Whatever happens on the outside world is going to happen. You're not going to be able to control interest rates. You're not going to be able to control unemployment, mortgage rates, taxation. But what you can do is make sure that your business is set up as tax efficient as possible. So get your guidance from your accountant, etc. That you're not spending money unnecessarily. that you keep all your expenditure as tight as possible and you look out for opportunities where they are, because there will be opportunities as well. So concentrate on your own personal economy is my advice, and that's what I'm going to be doing. And looking out for opportunities. I'm not going to spend my time worrying about things that I can't control, what the government's likely to do in terms of taxes and things like that. I'm obviously going to bear it in mind, what they're doing, but I'm going to make sure that I'm in the best possible position to keep my taxes as low as possible. Because let's face it, tax increases are coming. They've got to. With the amount of money that they spent on furloughing and all the rest of it in order to prop up the economy. So, that's coming. That's going to be painful for a lot of people. So, we're in for a bumpy ride. And it's not going to be this big bounce back that people are talking about. Yeah, there'll be a bounce back. But will it be overnight? No, of course it won't. There'll be another million unemployed people before we see this kind of bounce back coming. But the bounce back will inevitably come because ultimately, the UK economy is pretty sound and pretty strong. So, but you cannot go through something like this kind of pandemic and the impact it's having, and for there not to be more pain, economic pain coming. It's round the corner. So, yeah, big brave world. No, I don't think so. I think it's some subtle changes for the better, more flexibility in the workforce, people working from home. There's be some changes, of course, in terms of medical, probably research and things like that. Some businesses have pivoted and will keep those pivots in place. But will Joe Public see an awful difference when they go back to work? No, not once restaurants and cinemas and retail's all back to normal. And it will go back to normal. It's not going to stay social distancing forever. So yeah, those are my thoughts. But I think the biggest thing that everyone needs to take on board, more importantly than, how the world is changed or isn't changed, it's what are you going to do to protect yourself and concentrate on your own personal economy and not that of the country's economy that you cannot control or influence. There's a lot of things that you can influence, a lot of things that you can control. And those are all the things that we've just, I've just discussed. So concentrate on those. In a recession, it's always the important thing. And in a recession, it's always important to, if you're in a position and you have got cash, there will be opportunities out there as well. And if you haven't got cash, then it's all about surviving the best you can. Obviously, if you work for a company that's been particularly hit by this, it's going to be very difficult. You can't influence whether your job is going to be there in a month's time or not. The only thing you can do is concentrate on the things that you can control. If somebody makes you redundant at some point in the future, that's that isn't something you've been able to influence. It's not your fault, but it will be your fault if you've carried on spending money during this period willy-nilly and you've not controlled your personal finances. Put yourself in the best possible position and look after your own personal economy. And that's the only advice that I can possibly give over this period of time. It's what I'm going to do. I can't control anything else, only my own personal space and my personal environment. So, don't worry about everything else that's going on and just concentrate on that. So look, take care. I'm going to, I did tell you on the last podcast, I had an announcement on who I've got as a guest. So I have Brad Burton coming on as a guest. Now, for those of you that don't know anything about Brad is the number one UK motivational speaker in the UK. So, it's a big interview for me. It's not a format that I normally have followed in the past. I keep on meaning to invite guests, but not really done it up to now, apart from the odd one here and there that have been local business people. But Brad is the start of my new format, if you like, where I'm going to invite hopefully one guest a week onto my podcast, because obviously I'm putting out 3 a week at the moment. And Brad Burton is a fantastic way of starting this off. Number one motivational speaker in the UK. Not only is he a motivational speaker, he has an amazing story to be told as well. And that story continues because we're going to find out how he's taken his business from a mainly public speaking environment to effectively having to be forced, like a lot of us, onto online. So, we're going to get some really good stuff from Brad on that. And we're looking at that's hopefully going to go live the first or second week in June. So I'm interviewing him on around the 2nd of June. So it's probably likely to be the week after that you'll be able to hear him on the Franchise Entrepreneur, and that will be the start of our new kind of format. I've also got another guest lined up, equally big in the public speaking sector, but completely different from Brad in many ways. I'll keep this one to myself because he hasn't signed up yet, but we're in discussions. And again, I'm really excited about that one as well. I mean, I'm really excited about the whole new format, to be honest. I'm really looking forward to doing the interviews. So, yeah, when I've got that confirmed, I'll be advertising and telling you all about it and making sure everyone knows to tune into the Franchise Entrepreneur. So, look, I hope you found this interesting. Please leave your comments. You can follow me on all the other social media platforms that there are, pretty much. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I've got a Facebook page, so I'm on all of those. So if you want to find out more about me, Franchise Entrepreneur, then please follow me. So till the next time, which will be on Friday. So take care, stay safe, and speak to you soon.